Donald Trump is apparently planning an executive order that could lead to, and is intended to, the removal of all transgender members of the US military, perhaps instantly after he gets into office. So it could come the literal first day, January 2nd, of when he was returned to the White House. And this is obviously massive and even more aggressively transphobic than he was in his first term, and obviously would already exacerbate the massive issues of both staffing as well as morale in the service that we already are experiencing. But I want to remind everyone, there are believed to be, the number that's thrown around constantly is that there are 15,000 active service personnel who are transgender. Of course, considering that our culture as well as our military has been almost universally transphobic since day one, it's likely that there are probably a lot more, but that's the number who have felt at least relatively free to identify it. And so imagine taking a massive group, a stadium of people who have not only been willing to, but have devoted their life to service to our country, risked, and in some cases lost their life in service of their country. They're gone, done instantly. Doesn't matter if you just signed up, a couple months ago because you really care about what's happening in Ukraine, or maybe you really care about Israel's fight against the Palestinian civilians and all that. Doesn't matter, you're gone. Doesn't matter your politics, whatever. Because of your identity, you don't get to serve anymore, to be clear. Or maybe you've been serving for 10 years or 15 years or 19 years. Maybe you're relatively high ranking at this point, and your expertise and the accrued knowledge of years of service in multiple theaters doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. You're gone purely because of your identity, because that is how the right operates right now. And as you probably don't even need to be told, outside of, I believe, the Marines recently, every branch of the armed forces has not been meeting its recruiting goals for a variety of reasons. This is not going to fix that. In fact, it's moving in the exact opposite direction. And I think they know that, Francesca.
Well, exactly. And that is in part how and why the military was trying to attract different people, more women, more people of color, and LGBTQ plus people, was because of some of the recruitment problems. That's why you had the so-called woke ads that, to say nothing of the fact that there are people of color, women and trans people and queer people who are currently serving, right? But it's like, what are the options? It is either make the military inclusive or make the military inclusive to rapists and criminals and people who drive with DUIs and psychopaths, right? Like we see that all over the place, whether it's the police or the military. It's like, oh, the bar goes a little bit lower in order to, get the recruitment numbers up, much to the devastation of everybody else, right? And the communities they're trying to protect, allegedly. But this is my point about defending trans people, because you've got Pete Hegseth, who's still in the running to be, Department of Defense head. And he's openly said he doesn't believe that women should be serving in combat roles. So this isn't about trans people. This is about getting everyone that the right doesn't see as a tough macho guy, a super straight macho, right? If you don't look like a G.I. Joe, you got to get out of there. And that's how everything will be really straight and heterosexual when there are no women around. Anyway, don't follow that. But so again, this is why we defend this. And the other thing I want to say, last thing, I don't particularly like what the US military does. I think the budget is way overinflated. We fail Pentagon audits every single year. What is it, the 11th year in a row? However, we have to remember that people are not their identities. Just because the right politicizes your identity doesn't mean that Black people, queer people, trans people, wouldn't be very excited to join the military and want to serve their country in that way and believe in the United States military. It's the right that's saying they don't. But by virtue of politicizing their very identity and who they are, but that is not actually how people come down when it comes to their own identities.
Yeah, and I 100% agree. I hope everybody should just understand that. I want to point out just a couple of ironies before we close things out. So, as many people have pointed out, it is like an extra layer of what the hell are we doing that the guy who's like all of these people who are serving, risking their life in combat, maybe getting injured, maybe dying, you don't get to serve. The guy pushing for that is the guy who avoided the military draft 5 times by using his elite privilege and connections to invent medical conditions that allowed him to not serve. Oh, and also, he was so dedicated to his studies, lifelong academic Donald Trump. He was at the Ivy League. He can't go fight and die. That's for poor people to do. So he avoided serving, and all of these people who want to serve don't get to because I guess they're not patriotic enough. Again, purely based on their identity, because that's what right-wing politics is. It's identity, identity, identity. And every man watching this, maybe there's some conservative bros or something, should really ask yourself, what percentage of the rest of your life would you like to spend just thinking about trans people? Because the right is not going to be satisfied unless that number is shockingly high. That's why they talk about it constantly, and it's weird that you listen to them talk about it constantly. I think life should be about more than just identifying a group that you hate and obsessively thinking about them nonstop. But I'll conclude with one more bit of irony. So the idea here, and we hear this from people like Pete Hegseth, who we'll talk about later on, is we need a strong military. As Francesca said, we need an alpha cis male military. We need tough people who can like pick up somebody and run across a battlefield and like choke the life out of a villain or whatever. And obviously these trans people aren't going to be that. But also they're so overwhelmingly powerful and virile that they can't possibly be allowed to be in any sports or anything because they just dominate the competition. So which is it? Are they monsters in human form that will dominate every athletic competition the world over? Or are they too weak to serve in the military? They're making us weak, they're dragging us down. Kind of feels like it's whatever it needs to be at any given moment. God, these people are disgusting. The Republicans, that should be clear. Members make a difference here at TYT. You help make the show happen, and we see you in the chat with your loyalty badge. Click the join button to become a member today.